Welcome back to another episode of Driven by Cause. This episode is brought to you by Ariba, the thought leaders behind the industry's only completely integrated and fully automated all-in-one digital fundraising, donor relationship management database, healthcare hospitality, and auction software in one unified database. I'm joined by my co-host, Jay Fisk. Jay, how are you doing today?
David, as always, doing great and looking forward to yet another great episode.
Well, you're absolutely right, Jay. Today's going to be another great episode because today's guest is someone who literally grew his own business out of a backyard garden during the pandemic. Now, that is interesting in its own right. James Misner is the founder of the Kipos Group, Kipos being the Greek word for garden, a consulting firm that is laser focused on helping nonprofits break through their revenue ceilings. With over 20 years of executive leadership experience and a track record of driving tens of millions in growth, James works with organizations ranging from 500,000 to 50 million in revenue, and his clients have seen fundraising increases of 58% and 150% and beyond. I mean, that alone speaks volumes, James. And his approach is simple, but very powerful. Dig deep into where an organization has been before charting where it's going. He's also a host on the On the Ground podcast and a valued, and I mean valued, Ariba partner. And we're proud that he is part of our Ariba partner program. James, there's a lot to dig in today. Welcome to Driven by Cause.
David, Jay, it is great to be here with you. Let's roll up our sleeves and get to it.
We're so happy you could be here with us today. James, can you share a little bit about yourself and how you got started in the nonprofit industry?
Yeah, I'm a Marylander. I live right outside of Washington, D.C., and I got started in the nonprofit space by accident. I came to DC a few decades ago. We'll leave it there. And wanted to be, one of these folks that works in the government bureaucracy, wanted to change the world. And with just in a few months of arriving in town, realized I absolutely hated it. It was the most boring, the most slow, the most kind of, cesspool environment that you can think of. Sorry, any government partners out there. And I fell in love with a woman from East Africa who has now been my wife of 18 years and started traveling back and forth to visit her family and got into this whole NGO space, humanitarian relief, grassroots development, and absolutely loved it. And those instincts to, go and change the world, they morphed from government to the nonprofit sector. And I quickly learned in the nonprofit sector that there's a lot of really smart people and realized that all of that passion that I had to change the world that I thought I was going to do through government, I could do in the nonprofit space. And I quickly learned that in the nonprofit space, there are a lot of really smart people. And I mean wicked smart people. And my biggest value contribution wasn't idea capital or programmatic smarts. It quickly became the resource guy. Hey, we need to do this. James, you got to go find us some money. And within, 6, 7 months, I was, yeah, I was in the fundraising team,
Yeah.
worked my way up to chief advancement officer. And that's kind of how it all started.
Well, I fully understand getting into the industry by accident. I had a similar experience. I got asked by my son to help his choir raise some money so they could go to Finland. And the next thing I knew, I was in the benefit auction world for the next 35 years. So, you never know what path leads you to where you end up. You just, as the old saying goes, when you come to a fork in the road, take it, right? So
Absolutely.
you spent 2 decades inside social impact space before launching the Kipos Group, and it means you didn't just study the organizations from the outside, you lived it somewhat. As someone somewhere along the way, you made the shift from leader to advisor, and you come with 20 years of social impact space in the social impact space, driving tens of millions in revenue growth. So, what was the moment when you realized the biggest gap wasn't inside your own organization, it was across the entire sector?
So this is one of those pandemic stories, okay? So it's 2020, it's 2021. At the time I had two small kids, I have three now, and the pandemic affected us differently than a lot of people as a family. Yes, it was isolating, but we had friends. We formed a pandemic pod. I never had the loneliness, that some people experienced. In fact, I was grateful not to be on planes, every single week. I got more sleep. I exercised more. There were some good things, about that period. And the organization that I was leading, we were absolutely kicking butt. We doubled in 2020 and 2021. And it was a lot of fun to lead that team. And we actually came closer together through the pandemic. And I started getting these phone calls from friends and colleagues at kind of sister or collaborative organizations that were getting gut punched. They were getting kicked in the teeth over and over again. And I realized that I had been lucky enough to be part of building a really high impact team, and there were a lot of people who could take it from where I got it. I got it from under 10 million in private revenue to over 40 million in private revenue. They could take it to the next level because they were systems people. But there weren't as many people out there who could take something that was small and not fully processed and help get it to a sustainable size. And that's just something that I'm built to do. I love being an activator, kind of taking people on growth journeys. So during that pandemic era, people started calling and asking for help. And I said, you know what? I kind of like this. Let's roll up our sleeves and help them.
Mm. Wow.
And that's the perspective, exactly what drives the mission behind the Kipos group, I believe. Because when you look at the data on the nonprofit revenue growth, and the numbers are pretty sobering, only 2% of the nonprofits ever break 1 million in revenue, and only, what is it, 0.4% reach
Wait for
10 million. You found the Kipos group specifically to change those statistics. What's standing in the way for the other 98%?
Oh, that's an amazing question, David. Can I break those numbers down really quick, though, just a little bit further? Um,
Please.
when you think of this, okay, um, 98% over ever broach a million in revenue. Guys, anybody listening, $1 million is not what it used to be. This is not like 1986 anymore. $1 million gets you a handful of staff and maybe some small programs. And we are living in a period of time where the problems that our societies in the US and around the world are facing are in front of us every single day because of, the digital age, AI, social media. Okay. So these nonprofits are out there. Only 2% ever broach a million. I never have allowed myself to believe that bigger is actually better in terms of programmatic impact. Okay. Some of the biggest nonprofits in the world that are in the billions of revenue actually have subpar programming. Some of the best programming I've seen comes from really small, innovative, nimble organizations. And that core belief is kind of what drives me to help those people that haven't really figured out how to scale yet. Because I want to help people who have solved something on the program side. They've solved something that, big business can't monetize, that government can't wrap its mind around. I want to help them scale. I want to help them build a sustainable revenue system. But to your question, what keeps them from being able to do it? The answer is almost always the same thing, and it's themselves. Okay. And I don't say that in a consultant, let me point a finger at you kind of way. I say that in a people who lead these organizations lead it back to my earlier comments because they're wicked smart. They figured something out. But the type of intelligence that can solve hunger and poverty and homelessness and alcohol and drug recovery is a very different mind than can tell a marketing story, than can put something on social media, than can sit across from somebody of means and ask them for a significant investment. So that's what I say it's themselves. Most of them, and we've surveyed nonprofit leaders across the space, feel that fundraising is actually an existential threat to them individually. They think it is dangerous to sit across the table and ask someone for money. Okay. Now, we all know that it's not because we've done this for decades, but that's a story that that person's brain tells them. And what we have to do is get in there and reverse engineer that. No, this isn't a social threat. You can actually be safe in doing this. And actually, their answer, yes, no, maybe, whatever it might be, has zero bearing on you as an individual. You're an ambassador for an organization, for a mission, for a cause. And the only thing that we have found that solves that threat response, is actually just doing the work. No amount of therapy, no amount of classes, no amount of reading. Literally just going out and doing it
Hmm.
and showing your brain that you're safe and it doesn't have to put up that threat response is how people break out of it. And then somewhere along the line, they start enjoying it. And they realize the most loving thing I can do for this thing that I created, this organization that I get to steward, is to tell the story of this organization in the most effective way that I can possibly do.
Oh. Well, James, one of the things that makes your approach different is that before you even talk about what an organizational needs to go find, you look at what they already have, sort of an asset assessment, if you will. And you talk about helping nonprofits find their hidden assets. So, what does that actually mean? What kind of things do organizations already have that they're not using?
There are so many fundraising strategies out there that we just know work, right, guys? Like we just know that, major gifts work. Just slapping that on any organization without realizing where they're coming from is a recipe for disaster. Okay. I'm a big believer that where you're coming from is just as important as where you're going next. And what I like to do is I like to get in, I like to analyze both through data and through interviews what's actually under the hood in the organization. If I go to a mechanic, okay, because I'm not mechanical in any way, shape, or form, okay, if I go to a mechanic and they ask me what's wrong with the car, I'm going to tell them symptoms, the clunk that I hear, the brakes that squeak, something like that. But I'm not going
Yeah,
to be able to accurately diagnose that problem.
right.
And for people who aren't fundraising leaders, people who haven't done this for decades, they can tell me, we need more money. We're not raising as much as we used to, but it doesn't tell me why. Okay. I want to get in and I want to accurately diagnose what's going on, both what's working and what's not working, so that we can get the right solution for them. No one likes to go to the mechanic and feel like they are being sold something that they don't need.
Yeah,
Okay. You drop your car off for an oil change, it should be 50 bucks. And that afternoon, you're paying 3 grand to fix something that you didn't even know was a thing, okay? I don't want to help people in that way. I want to help people get to the next level. Also, when you tell people, hey, you're not so good at this, you just need to get better, that feels crummy for all of us.
yeah,
They got to where they are somehow, whether it's $10 million, whether it's $1 million, whether it's $100,000, something along the way somewhere worked. And I would rather build on that positive experience that people have had in something that works and use that to build their fundraising and marketing muscle and do it from a positive point of view than a deficit point of view. And the really interesting thing is that you can have organizations that are data heavy and scientifically focused, and you would just look at them saying, there's no way these folks are ever going to be great storytellers. But you say, okay, they're really strong at data. How do we use that scientific brain that they have and use a scientific process or the scientific method to help them find their way, discover their way into fundraising success? Okay, we work with a lot of nature centers, outdoor schools, conservation groups, and we found that to be wildly successful with them. So I'd rather take the positives that they have and build on it while mitigating for their weaknesses than just kind of, slap people around and say, get better at A, B, and C. And I don't want to sell them solutions they don't need.
Yeah, which is always the right way of doing business anyways. I think it's great that you actually see that where maybe a lot of others don't necessarily see that. But let's talk about people inside these organizations for a minute, because this is something that you've written about recently, and it's a conversation the sector needs to, I don't know, have more honesty around it. I would say it that way. And your recent writing argues that nonprofit staff burnout isn't primarily about workload or underpayment. It's about something deeper. What is it that you see, and what are the leaders missing?
Okay, well, let me say this to start. and I have a very strong opinion on this, okay? There are nonprofit leaders that are overworked, that are underpaid, that are bearing a lot. So my answer to your question, David, does not negate that fact that that does exist in our space. However, I think that those are symptoms, not the cause of what's actually happening, okay? If you just go to, LinkedIn and you're part of the nonprofit community, you're going to see 30 posts a day about burnout in organizations. You're going to see, all this stuff flying around, I just can't do it anymore. But I really believe we're diagnosing what is happening in the wrong way, and that a 4% cost of living increase, a pizza party, Friday afternoons off is really not going to do anything to really solve that problem. And we have to start with an uncomfortable truth about the world that our teams are living in, not just at work but everwhere. And I believe really deeply that as a society, we've lost what we traditionally refer to as resilience. Not because the times that we live in are uniquely hard, even though there are some uniquely challenging aspects about the time that we live in, but human beings have navigated hard times throughout our history, many of them harder than the times that we are living in today. But I think that we as a society are dealing with it in a poorer way because the infrastructure that builds and sustains resilience has been systematically dismantled by a really powerful force. And that force is technology. Okay. Because resilience isn't a personality trait. It's not something that you're born with a set amount of resilience, and some people have it and as others, don't. Resilience is shaped through relationships, um, and it's shaped and it's forged in community. Okay. And there's something that's really interesting that's happening right now, and that is that the average worker in the United States spends 6 hours a day on a screen. And I'm not talking about a screen like what we're on right now, like Zoom, where we're actually engaging with another human. I'm not talking about being in a Word document or Excel actually doing work. I'm talking about blank time on a screen. I'm talking about doom scrolling or whatever else you want to call that, where you are just with your thumb, with your cursor over and over and over again, just doing absolutely nothing. And if you listen to tech podcasts, okay, and you find these moments where those leaders are being honest and explaining what their business model really is, Meta is not necessarily competing with Google, and Google is not competing with X. What they're doing is they are actually competing with real life communities. Their business threat is not that you're going to switch platforms. Their business threat is that you're going to go hang out with people in real life. You're going to go to a barbecue. You're going to go to a coffee shop. You're going to go out to lunch with somebody and talk instead of scrolling on your phone. And that isolation, okay, that isolation is what I deeply believe is weakening people's resilience
Yeah,
muscle because there is nothing, okay, um, that can replace this beautiful human experience, as inefficient as it is, as being with other people and doing that work together.
yeah,
Okay. And
yeah,
that means that the people on our teams, whether they're fundraisers or program staffs or accountants, um, they are showing up to work every morning, having spent their evenings and their weekends inside an environment that shortens attention spans, that fragments their connections, that amplifies anxiety, and that genuinely makes money by making us all angry and agitating us. Okay. So if you want to figure out how to deal with this nonprofit burnout situation, you need to figure out how to get your staff and community together with each other. And I think
yeah,
this applies to your donors because donors can burn out. We call that donor fatigue. I don't see that in organizations where the staff and the donors are actually engaging in community together. Events, surveys, they're going to lunch together, they're doing, weekends, together, they're visiting the programs together. I don't see that kind of donor fatigue. I don't see that kind of donor burnout. in those places. But I see it in the transactional online fundraising spaces
Yeah.
where donors burn out. And as you can tell, I feel really passionate about this
Yeah.
because I think that it's something that not just in the nonprofit space, not just in fundraising, but as in society as large, can be a real differentiator both for people and organizations.
You mentioned donor fatigue, so let's get into the data just a little bit. You've done some really important research with, where nonprofit fundraising stands right now, and some of what you found actually should be kind of a wake-up call in the industry. I mean, you recently published analysis of the 2025 nonprofit fundraising landscape, and your research indicated that 86% of first-time donors in 2025 didn't give again in 2020. I'm sorry, in 2024 didn't give again in 2025. But that's a pretty low return rate. That should scare a lot of people in the nonprofit industry. So it's clear that it's broken for a lot of organizations, if not most organizations. What's the root cause, and how do we fix it?
I think the root cause to this, first and foremost, is a lack of communication. Okay. And I think that lack of communication comes from a lot of different sources. And I think one is actually that lack of community that people experience and then don't invite others into.
Yeah,
I do a test at the end of every year in December, the last week, and I give small amounts, 5, 10, $20 to a bunch of different nonprofits out there across different spaces, kind of direct service, content. I am shocked every year that the number of replies I get back,
yeah,
even just the basic automated welcome series,
yeah,
it gets less every single year.
yeah,
So I think the number one reason that we're seeing this kind of donor retention cliff is just the basic lack of a thank you.
yeah,
And a confirmation receipt is not a thank you. Okay. These are not the same things that are out there. But the other thing I'm also seeing is that donors who have given to organizations over long periods of time are starting to drop off. As new staff come in, as the people they work with, age out and retire,
yeah,
the younger staff aren't engaging them in the ways they desire to be engaged with. They're not asking about kids and grandkids. They're not inviting them in. They're not inviting them in as advisors to the organization. They're coming up and showing up with a lot of I know best, kind of just write the check and, let me get on with my day.
right,
And that lack of community, whether it's the community of a thank you, whether it's the community of, hey, you gave last month, let me show you in this, simple two-page report exactly what that money did to advance this mission that we cause about together. Whether it's the formal sit-down lunch or in the living room, those things are getting less and less and less. Okay. Um, and donors notice it and they hate it.
yeah,
The other thing that donors hate, and I hear this from donors because when I analyze an organization, I talk to their donors too, because I want to hear what their experience is.
Yeah.
Donors keep telling me if this organization doesn't figure out how to keep staff, which is why I care so much about this resilience thing. If another person shows up in my living room or takes me out to lunch and I have to re-explain myself every 18 months to a new person, I just need to find an organization where I don't have to do that and invest in them. Because if
yeah,
that was my company, I'd be out of business. So there's a lot of different things here, Jay, at play, but I think communication and community is the reason that we're seeing this
yeah.
precipitous decline in donor retention.
I'd like to make a comment about that real quick, and that is that I think that part of the problem is that nonprofits pay a lot of attention to who donates. They don't pay a lot of attention as to why they donate.
Yeah,
People donate for different reasons. Some do it for tax purposes. Some do it because a friend asked them to. Some do it because they have someone that's affected by the cause. There's 1,000 different reasons. But if they don't understand why an individual actually made the donation, whether it was $20 or $200,000, then getting them to be a repeater is a crapshoot.
absolutely. And how do you find that out? You ask a question.
Yeah, yeah, talk to
You have to
them.
talk to
Yeah,
them. You ask a question, which means you stop talking. You're not showing up to present, you're showing up to facilitate. Okay.
right,
Whether
right.
that facilitation is an online survey, okay, or whether that facilitation is a deep, kind of introspective dive into a person, you ask them questions and you let them talk about themselves and their family and their motivations, and you learn. Then you ask another question, and oh my goodness, who doesn't love to talk about themselves for a little bit?
Yeah,
People will give you the answers that you need to understand who they are and why they do what they do.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for
Hey
that.
James, I think that is a podcast topic in its own right about the decline in donor acquisition, the decline in donor retention.
Yeah,
Jay's points are spot on about and it's a simple thing. I don't mean to be simplifying it, but it is a simple thing, knowing your audience, right? And
Absolutely.
he's absolutely right. Every donor is different. I also believe you are 100% right. I talk about this a lot about acknowledgement, and acknowledgement comes in different forms. And you're absolutely right. If and I'll leave it at this because I think what you're bringing up, and you said it, I don't want to talk about the things of what I can't do. I want to talk about the things that I can do. And any nonprofit of any size, regardless of their software and technology, because I think that contributes to some of these uh, declines, right? Because your technology is not automated, that is giving them the ability to respond quickly, right? Whether it's an event that they did and then they're responding. If you're not responding to your donors, I'm going to leave it from my perspective in this way. If you don't respond to your donors that attended the event, gave a donation, gave a paid a pledge, gave through a different friend for whatever that cause was, and have an immediate acknowledgement within a 48-hour turnaround time. I'll say it positive. If you have an immediate 48-hour turnover time of an acknowledgement on any of those different types, your donor acquisition could increase through the new donors that gave a donation, whether it's through a friend, your retention rate for acknowledging those people that gave a tribute gift, on behalf, or attended your event that's been a donor. If you acknowledge them within 48 hours, I would tell you your retention rates are going to increase. The problem
yeah,
is they're not. They're waiting 30 days because they just maybe did a major event. They're
yeah,
exhausted from the months of preparing. They're exhausted after that night. They're going to take care of all of those donors later. And 30 days later, when they call James and they say, "Hey, Jay, I want to thank you for," and Jay's a very polite guy, as we all know. He's my co host, that's why. And Jay will say, "Hey, thank you for calling. Hang up. If he's by himself, he'll talk to himself. And if he's with somebody, he'll say, I guess my contribution wasn't that important. It took him 30 days to get back to me."
yeah.
That becomes a negative. So I appreciate both of you, and I love doing this stuff. And I hope this resonates with the audience because everybody here is spot on. And I'm glad you care enough to acknowledge that because we speak volumes of that. But moving forward, you've been in the trenches. So this even goes further with the organizations that have achieved remarkable results. And when you look back at those wins, I'll call them wins, there's a common thread that separates the ones that break through from the ones that stay stuck, right? I mean, you've helped clients achieve results. We said it earlier by 150% growth, 58% fundraising increases. When you look at those wins, what's the one thing those organizations did that most nonprofits are unwilling or unable to do?
I think it's really simple, actually. Okay. The ones that are able to achieve that growth, they believe us when we say that this is a systems issue, that there's not silver bullets here. Okay. That this is a deep intersection between program, marketing, storytelling, communication, fundraising. And you can't look at it like, hey, this is somebody else's job. So we're going to play, whisper down the lane. We do this, you do this, you do this. The organizations that believe us when we say that, and they try to create a web of relationships that is just sticky and captures people in it to the point where they become rip-roaring fans of that organization, its leadership, its mission. Those are the ones that are seeing that kind of success. The ones that think that it's very transactional, hey, let's just do this series of major donor acquisition direct mails. And if we do the strategy right, we'll succeed. Now, there's nothing wrong with a major donor acquisition series. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the ones that are seeing that crazy, very quick growth, it's an all hands on deck approach. It's a hey, we need to grow this organization to solve, XYZ in the world. So no one gets to say it's not them. No one gets to say it's the other person's job. Everybody is accountable to it. And then they become rabid about tracking lead indicators. Okay. Every single month, we're going to do XYZ. And everybody in the organization knows this is their part of it. Whether that's responding to donors, David, you were generous and gave people 48 hours. I tell them 24 hours, unless it's a Sunday. You don't got to call people on Sunday, but Saturday, you better be calling if it was a Friday night event. Um, 24 hours. So if you're the donations manager that logs in the check and, pulls the wires through, you know what your job is. 24-hour response time. Okay. Whether you're manning the, info at, email address and somebody responds, quick responses on that. Okay. And everybody has lead indicators. Everybody knows what they're accountable for. And then those are all made public inside the organization.
Yeah.
If, and I believe this, the most loving thing you can do for the people your organization is serving or the cause that you are serving is to raise money so you can serve, support, help, advance, whatever, then we've got to be really good at this and measure it. Okay. So systems approach, no silver bullets, all hands on deck, and measure what matters. And it's publicly available for everybody in the organization. So nobody can point fingers.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned systems. So speaking leads me to my next question, which is having the right tools for the job. We're excited to talk about this next question because it hits close to home for us here at Arriva. Your group, Kipos Group, has recently announced a strategic partnership with Arriva, and you're choosing Exceed Further as a recommended platform because of its all-in-one approach. So, what made that the right fit for nonprofits that you work with?
Yes, I think there's probably three things here, Jay, that made it the right fit. Number one was every time I'm in a meeting, and this happens a lot, where the volunteer database doesn't communicate with the donor database, doesn't
Yeah,
communicate with the program database,
yeah,
I would like to throw myself off of a roof. Okay. It is just the most painful conversation. And I can handle, maybe I don't have enough resilience. Maybe I need more community to deal with those conversations. But these are some really simple things that I think we should have solved decades ago. Okay. And your platform solves that to the degree where they are integrated, but also can, act as their standalone, thing. 70% of volunteers, if asked in the right way, will donate to the organization. So why in the world are these things not the same database integrated? All of
yeah,
that. That's reason number one. Okay. Reason number two is your a la carte model. Okay. Um, you guys know at this point in this conversation, I have strong opinions. I hate when I go to a tech company website and here is the silver plan, here's the gold plan, here's the platinum plan. And if I just need one thing in the platinum plan, but silver would have been fine for everything else. I got to pay for all this junk that I don't need that's going to complicate my life and make the dashboard have way too many buttons and I know what to do with. Okay. And given that we serve a lot of small and mid-sized nonprofits, that's our niche. Okay. Small and mid-size. I hate when they have to choose with their limited resources between hiring a fundraiser who can go change the game for them or getting the platinum plan on another, service out there for one small capability that they need.
yeah,
Okay. I love that people can choose a la carte with you
yeah.
guys. Okay. Um, oh gosh, I
Excellent.
lost the third one. Sorry.
No, that's
Give
okay.
me a second.
No, but you've hit on some, hit on important points, and the fact that it's all in one. As an auctioneer for the last 35 years, I can tell you I've spent untold hours helping clients try and figure out how do we export from the auction software into their CRM, and how do we get the data from the CRM into the auction software and back and forth, and just waste hours after hour after hour of staff and volunteer time. And having to not have to worry about that is, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So,
And you're right. Not to make this a commercial, but you're absolutely right. You need to have a technology, whether it's a Reba or not. And we've done a really great job at a number of those things. That the theme has always been an all-in-one, meaning that no matter what transaction, whether it was a donation, whether it was an event registration, whether it was a donation through peer-to-peer, a donation through team fundraising, and it goes back to James what we all said earlier about immediate acknowledgement. If the system is fully automated, everything's going into one database. You don't have to move data like even Jay said on an auction business.
yeah.
The staff is getting the staff is getting an immediate notification of something that a constituent, and it could be a volunteer, it could be a donor, it could be your largest donor, it could be a first-time donor, it could be a board member, it doesn't matter, that you know immediately who it is, what they did, look into the database, and reach out to them through a phone call right then and there and not waste time. The other nice thing that eliminates, if they don't have the time because they're busy, scheduling out within, we'll use your time because I like yours better, 24 hours. Make it easy, print out a report of everybody that attended and everybody that gave a donation, separate it and give acknowledgement. That comes from leadership, right? Because back to your point with new staff members, if there's a nice best practice, regardless of new staff members or younger generations that do it differently, that expect to, everybody else wants to, reach me through, social media. No, make that phone call. You accomplish these things. And with the right technology, it will enable you and empower you to improve your processes. So I agree with you. We'd like to give our audience one takeaway from the show that can begin that, think of it this way, that can begin this week, James. All right. What would be one action you would recommend any organization or every organization to take after listening to this episode from you?
I would love any leader listening to this to block 30 minutes on their calendar, to put their phone down, to close their laptop lid, and to do two things. Okay. One is answer the question and literally do it on a scratch pad. Do it on a piece of paper, write it, don't type it. Okay. Why are we getting the results that we're getting? What has worked to get us these results? Okay. Write it down. Spend 30 minutes doing that. Then block another 30 minutes and invite some colleagues at work into your office or to the coffee shop on the corner and ask them the same question and talk about it. Why are we getting the results that we're getting? And see what happens from that. See what ideas it sparks, see what dots that it connects, and know that you're getting the exact results that you're getting for a reason. Your system is engineered to get those results. Figure out what the good parts of it are, and how do you put more wood, more fuel on that fire. Figure out what's kind of your Achilles heel. Let's get that taped up, and then chart your path forward. A lot of us treat strategy like it has to be a big 2 year long, process. But what we just talked about is strategy. What's working? What's not working? Let's address them and move forward. And in today's breaking neck pace world, sometimes that's all you need to take it to the next level.
Nice.
So we've spoken a lot about your work, but I think our listeners would be curious to know what's something about you that might surprise our audience to find out.
Well, it's not that I have strong opinions. That came out pretty clear, I think. Even though I do. Um, David mentioned this in the beginning that Kipos is the Greek word for garden. So at the same time that I started the Kipos group, which is, I'll call it my day job, my family and I moved further out into the suburbs, maybe the exurbs, you would say. And we live on 6.5 acres now, and we are actually building a cut flower farm. Okay.
Wow.
So at Kipos, we help people grow beautiful things in their organizations and their fundraising programs. And at wildclover.farm, we actually literally grow beautiful things. We just ended our first spring peony subscription service. The last boxes go out tomorrow.
Wow.
And I love it. I never thought I would do this, and I'm having so much fun, both at Kipos and at Wild Clover.
We're not at the end just yet. What is something that we didn't ask you that you wish we did?
It's a great question. I want you to ask your next guest because I don't know how I would answer this. We're always on podcasts and we're talking about, some of the things that are working in the nonprofit space. A lot of the times we're talking about what's not working. But what is the biggest strength in the nonprofit sector right now?
Mm.
What is the biggest asset that we as a community have to build on right now? Because it's a challenging time for nonprofits, right? Government funding is government funding, and it's kind of a mess right now. Society and world attention spans are down. But what do we have to build on that we could all rally around and really make work? I don't know how I would answer it, but if you ask me, I would like to think about it.
That's awesome. James, that was great. We're going to take a quick commercial and we'll be right back after this.
We are a team that has had an enduring influence on the nonprofit industry for more than 3 decades. We pride ourselves on developing and delivering technology with a purpose, software born of a genuine understanding and passion for cause. We are relentlessly dedicated to our clients' success. We are with our clients for good. We are Ariva, tech with purpose, driven by cause. Ariva is the trusted advisor and market leader of fundraising, donor relationship management, and auction software and services. Exceed further, our evolutionary all-in-one digital fundraising and donor relationship management software is helping nonprofits worldwide further their mission, transform fundraising, and cultivate relationships with donors and constituents. Our Maestro Auction virtual, live, and silent auction software, text-to-bid, virtual and mobile bidding software, and text-to-fund, text-based donation software are helping nonprofits raise billions of dollars through thousands of virtual fundraising events, charity auctions, and galas. Visit Ariva.com and reach out today and see how Ariva can help your nonprofit organization go further.
Welcome back to Driven by Cause. So, James, now it's time for our next segment, which we call Ask the Maestro. And this is where we bring real questions from real nonprofit professionals straight to our guests. And so today you get to be the maestro. So, James, let's get your thoughts on this one. This question comes from Michelle. She's a development director in the Pacific Northwest, and she says, and we quote, "Hi, Driven by Cause. I'm a development director at a mid-sized nonprofit, and I feel like I can see exactly what we need to do to grow, but I can't get buy-in from our executive director and our board to make the changes. How do you break through that internal resistance with leadership, or when leadership is comfortable with the status quo and afraid to take risks?" And that's a classic, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Yeah, well, Michelle, thanks for a really hard question. Um, oh my goodness, we get this one all the time. I think there's a few things, Michelle. And one is depending on the structure and the culture of your organization. If the board and the CEO are just happy with where your revenue is, they're just happy with where I don't know if there's actually much you can do. I think that leadership is a monumentally important thing in fundraising. Okay. If your leaders don't have a vision, that is a problem. Okay. What can you do though, besides just jumping ship to help that? I think process really matters. If you are in an organization that's been around for a while and the culture and the leadership structures and systems are a bit rigid, I think the process by which you bring ideas is potentially more important than the ideas themselves. Okay. And I would recommend that you take a highly participatory process in that. If the board is 8, 9, 10 members, take each of them out to lunch or coffee over the course of 3, 4 months. Um, You might have to slow down to speed up. Okay.
Yeah.
And instead of presenting your ideas and your plan, ask them open-ended questions. Figure out what the pain points are for them from their perspective, not from
Yeah.
yours,
Right.
but from their perspective, because they're the ones that it seems like hold the authority about what happens next. So if you are trying to solve a problem that they don't feel, it's kind of like selling something to a person that doesn't feel the need for it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So find out what their problems are so that you can then agitate that problem in your messaging to them, in your communication to them, and find a way um, to um, to help them fix what they see to be broken or help them take the next step that they desire to take.
Yeah.
This is kind of classic 360 leadership, right? And depending on your culture, how you lead up, both the culture and the individual personalities, how you lead up is a delicate dance.
Yeah.
I hope that's helpful, Michelle from the Pacific Northwest.
Well, it's a great answer, and basically what it comes down to is find a way to make it their idea rather than your idea. If it's their idea, they'll support it. And asking the questions, as you mentioned, will cause them to realize that it becomes their idea, and then they'll move forward on it. That's a great answer. Thank you. And if you'd like to have your question answered on a future episode of Driven by Cause, please drop it in the comments or send it our way. You just might hear your question answered here by one of our future guests.
Hey, James, it was a real pleasure having you with us today, and it was such a treat and was so much aligned. It's really a wonderful conversation. I'm glad you're part of our partner program, and thank you so much for all the insights and advice that you've given to our listeners today.
Well, it was great to be here with you guys. Best of luck on what you're doing. Thanks again for having me.
You
Our
bet.
pleasure.
I want to thank all of our listeners for joining us today. Make sure you subscribe to Driven by Cause. And while you're at it, please leave us a 5-star rating, not a 4-star, but a 5-star rating. I also want to give a special thank you to our amazing sponsor, Arriva. Thank you to all the fantastic listeners. We hope you'll join us on the next time on Driven by Cause and make it a great day. Thank you.